All right, everyone. The doorbell to come in the room seems to have quieted down, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'll just let people in as they proceed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Already just looking through the little boxes here, I see lots of familiar faces from previous forums, so thank you again to people that are joining me again, and to any new family members that are with us, welcome. My name is Adam Flynn-Tabloff. I am the director here at Davies, and this afternoon I have Susan Votto with me. She is the supervisor of career and technical education here at Davies, and she's going to be assisting me with moderating questions when we get to the question and answer portion of today's family forum. This is our third forum. I apologize in advance. The second one, I forgot to click the record button, so we could not post that to our website, but I have already clicked record on this one. So this will be posted for your future reference. And because of my failure to record number 2, I am going to briefly revisit a couple key updates from Family Forum number 2. But I really want to focus on what has happened since that forum, which occurred in early August. Because I'm expecting a pretty full house, right now we have about 50 people in the room, which is a good amount. I'm going to ask that you please remain muted until you're called upon by either Mrs. Votto or myself. And you can, if you would use the hand raise feature to indicate that you have a question, that would be best. You can also use the chat if you're not comfortable voicing your question, but it's a little bit difficult to monitor both live questions and the chat. So I'd prefer if you ask your question live when we get to that part. Again, if you haven't already done so, I would draw your attention to our draft plan on our website that you can read. It's regularly updated. And today, I'm going to focus on the important updates that have happened since we met last, and then give time for you to ask questions and to raise concerns so that we can give you answers when possible. I want to again thank all of you family members. I recognize that this is still incredibly trying and difficult for all of you. I know that you're trying to balance probably your work life with children, very often multiple children at multiple different schools with multiple different plans. I myself am a parent of a school-age child, and I share that stress with you. I recognize how difficult it is. So we're really trying at Davies to make this as simple as humanly possible for you. So thank you for your partnership and your flexibility as we get ready to welcome students back. Here's the key goals I have for today's forum. I want to again update you on some changes that have happened since the second forum we had a few weeks ago, what the rationale behind those decisions are. I want to go over some updated statewide calendar information. You probably saw when Commissioner Infante Green and Governor Raimondo announced a delay to the start of instruction for students. We'll review that. I'm also going to review with you the likely scenario under which Davies will reopen. The most likely scenario, recognizing that the final decision is not mine, it is the governor's, and she will make that decision on August 31st. But I have been given a heads up of what is most likely. And I think you'll be pleased with what's most likely. We're also going to spend a little bit of time going over some key information from what's called the playbook. We've been talking about this ever since schools were told to prepare for reopening. And the Department of Health has released this wonderful 24-page document that guides schools through understanding how will we respond to either a positive case of COVID-19 in the school or what's called a probable case of COVID-19 in schools. And how do we respond to that? Who needs to be quarantined? Who needs to be sent home, etc. We have that information. It's actually a really wonderful tool. We're still getting to know the tool a little bit, but I have some key things I want to share with you about that today. I always want people to understand the core values that drive our work around reopening. They remain the same as they were before, but I will review them again. Please keep in mind all of these decisions are still fluid and changing based upon guidelines that are put upon us as a school. And while we don't have all the answers yet, we continue to do our best to get answers to alleviate your concerns and to help you with planning. What I want you to be able to do is get clarity around aspects of our plan and pose any new questions that have surfaced since we had our last forum. Let's quickly review the core values that continue to drive Davies' reopening work. These have not changed, but they still are guiding everything we do. First, we are still putting safety first. We're being transparent with everyone. That's why we continue to hold these forums, so you know what we're doing and why we're doing it. We are doing everything we can to be equitable and to ensure that our decisions are doing what's best for all students, particularly those who may have the most severe needs. We continue to listen to you and take your feedback to heart and use it to guide our decision making. But we're also being decisive. We are under tight time constraints, so we are trying to make decisions quickly, and we're also trying to keep them simple, recognizing that many of you are probably juggling multiple reopening plans for different schools your children may go to. So let's jump right into updates and changes. The first update since we last met that I want to share with you is related to our reopening scenario. You may recall originally, students were supposed to start instruction on August 31st, and the governor was going to make her decision about reopening 2 days ago. That obviously didn't happen. Everything's been pushed back. So to be clear, the governor will now dictate the scenario under which every district in Rhode Island reopens, including Davies, on August 31st. And the new start date for students is September 14th. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how we're envisioning that first week for students. And I think you'll be pleased with the plan that we have, because I think of it, our plan for the first week, as dipping our toes in in-person learning, slowly coming back with a staggered start so that everybody can get used to this new way that we're operating and feel safe doing so. But to be clear, the governor is going to make this decision on 8/31. And as of right now, we are being told that instruction will start on September 14th. We are using that additional planning time to continue getting everything in order for a smooth, safe, healthy return to school, regardless of which scenario is dictated to us. Last time I met with you, I shared with you a major change, being that we were going to move towards a goal of a partial in-person reopening. When I met with everyone the first time, this trophy that you can see here was above full in person. That was what we were really shooting for and hoping for. Given the anxiety of families, students, teachers, and honestly leaders, we reeled it in a little bit and said, we think it would be best if we started with a partial in-person opening, which would be 50% of students in person 2 days per week. And we would do that alphabetically. That's the plan that we are moving forward with. And that is the plan that the commissioner has told me Davies is most likely to re-enter school under a partial in-person scenario. That's what's most likely right now. Again, it's not my final call, but we've been told prepare for a partial in-person scenario, which means on any given day, we would only be at 50% of our capacity in the classrooms and in our common areas. That should be very relieving to everybody in the building, because that means in classrooms on any given day, your child would not be in a classroom at maximum with more than roughly 13 to 14 other students, maximum. Davies is fortunate in that most of our classes are not large. We have rather small class sizes traditionally, and this year's no different. The largest class size we ever have is 28 students. So if 50% of them are here, the most other children your child will be in a classroom with is 13 other students. That's very low, and that enables us to maximize social distancing and to couple that with mask wearing. You're also cutting down by doing a partial in-person opening in our common areas. Now the hallways are only 50% of the kids walking through them. And what's even better is we redesigned our dismissal procedures and our meal service procedures to accommodate for every student being in the building. So for example, we moved from having one place where students eat lunch to having 5 places where students eat lunch. We're going to maintain that plan even though 50% of kids will be here. So now we're going to have 50% of kids in the building with 5 locations for them to eat lunch in, maximizing that ability to spread out. So we're keeping a lot of the same protocols that were built for 100% of students here, but we're going to use those protocols with 50% of students here. And my hope is that as parents, that makes you feel better and understanding like, wow, we're really creating more opportunity for social distancing between students in both classrooms and common areas. Let's go over a couple key dates in line with that predicted partial in-person opening. Our teachers are coming back on Monday, and our teachers now have 7 days of professional development before your children come back on the 14th. And we have planned a lot of very valuable professional learning for those days that are going to prepare our teachers to support your children and to get your children learning again and to do it in a safe environment. We're spending all day on Monday with all of our teachers going into their classrooms, reconfiguring their physical space so that they can maximize distance between students and so that we have the necessary physical space for kids. We have plans for all 7 of those PD days. So our teachers are going to be ready when your kids come back. We're very fortunate. Most school districts are getting 3 days. We built in 7. So that starts on Monday, and we're excited to have our teachers back, and they're excited. On August 31st, our friend Gina is going to make the announcement about which reopening scenario we come back under. And again, I've been led to believe that it will be a partial 50% scenario. So I'm going to go over information with you based on that. So the leadership team and I started talking about, okay, if kids come back on September 14th, what's that first week going to look like for them? We recognize teachers are going to be anxious, kids are going to be anxious. We have a new group of freshmen coming to the school, never been here before, and I've got some anxious parents. So what we are proposing is that on that first day, September 14th, that will be a freshman only day for students whose names end in A through J. We still really feel that we need a day for our freshmen where they are the only ones in the building. We can do an orientation. We can do a building tour with them so that they can find their way around this huge place. And we can start building those relationships with our freshmen. So on September 14th, the plan is that students whose last names begin with A through J in the 9th grade will report to Davies for their first day of school. The second day, September 15th, will be the freshman orientation day for freshmen whose names end in K through Z. They need their own time in the building to do all those things I just described for the kids that come on Monday. On Wednesday of that first week, that's when all students, A through J, will come to Davies. We'll do another new orientation for our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders because they need to get reacclimated to the school. They haven't been here since March. And then on Thursday, all students with last names K through Z will be in the building for orientation. So really what you're looking at is the most number of days your child would be in the building that first week of school would be 2 if they're a freshman. They'd be in on their orientation day, either Monday or Tuesday, and then they'd be in again either Wednesday or Thursday based on their last name. Upperclassmen are only going to be in the building 1 day that week. And I believe, and I hope you agree, that is a nice way to re-enter school. It gives them an opportunity to get back in the building under the new conditions we're all operating under at 50% capacity. Not going to be a lot of kids in the building, gives them time to get reoriented, and will prepare them for the following week when Under the current scenario, every student would be in the building 2 days a week. So this is our orientation week that we're planning starting on September 14th, really focusing on supporting our new freshmen. That Friday, after everyone's had their time in school, will be a remote learning day where we will connect with students through Zoom. That's our plan as of now. Talked about that. Okay. I'm going to, actually, I'm going to keep going through the information, and then we will take questions from the chat and from you live. So a couple other updates. I talked about this update last time, Family Forum 2, but I want to revisit it because I forgot to record. Face coverings. The new Rhode Island Department of Health guideline is that face coverings must be worn at all times. It used to be that if you were socially distanced 6 feet or more, you could remove the mask. The rule is now universal masking. So we've changed our policy that students and staff all wear their mask all of the time. We got a lot of questions about what about during gym? So we've updated our frequently asked question document on the Davies website in regards to that. But gym is one of the few times where if we can get students outside, which luckily we can do quite often in the fall, they're able to space out at great enough of a distance where they can take a mask break and take that off. That's really the only time that masks should be coming off. Recognizing, however, for some students with medical issues, wearing a mask all day may not be possible. We recognize that. The Department of Education recognizes that. And what I need you to do, again, if you are the parent or guardian of one of those students, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you the contact information of the individual you need to get in touch with so we can put that accommodation in place. We can work with your student if the mask is an issue for them. Otherwise, the mask needs to be worn by everyone. I got mine right here. Mrs. Votto and I walk around in them all day. So that is an update and a change. In terms of social distancing, because we switched to that alphabetically based 50% scenario, we've greatly increased our ability to social distance. So I'm confident in our ability to create distance both in common areas and in classroom instructional areas. And again, our teachers are going to reorganize their physical spaces on Monday to maximize physical distance. There's a lot of new research out there stating that 3 feet of distance may be appropriate, especially when masked. However, we're erring on the side of caution, trying to maximize distance and following the universal masking rule per the Department of Health. Let's talk about screening. Screening your students for COVID-19 symptoms is a key piece to preventing an outbreak at Davies. We have a 2-layered approach to screening. One of them is I need, when possible, you to screen your child each morning. I recognize some of you might already be at work and off doing what you need to do. Luckily, these are high school students. They should be able to self-screen, but there has to be a level of self-screening at home before they leave the house. To aid in that self-screening, our pre-engineering department has created an app that we expect every member of the Davies community to complete on a daily basis. Everyone from me to a brand new freshman needs to complete that app daily. We've sent the information out on how to download it. And on the first day of school, we're going to go over with the kids on how to access the app, either through a phone if they have one, or through their school-issued Chromebook. That's screening number 1. The second piece of our screening is thermal scanning technology that gives us an image, basically like the one that I've shown you here. This technology is installed at Davies. It's in. To my knowledge, we're the only school that has it. Maybe I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, we're the only one that has it. So at each of our 3 designated entrances, Students will pass by a thermal scanning camera that will be manned by a member of the administrative team that will give us an image very much like this. If a student has a fever that's above 100, at or above 100.4 degrees, which is the CDC's threshold, they will have a red box show up around their face. We're not going to tackle them and pull them out of line and make a scene. We're going to ask them to step aside, and we're going to do a secondary screening with a point and click thermometer, which is more accurate. If the point and click thermometer says they have no temperature, we'll send them on their merry way. If, however, the point and click thermometer verifies what the thermal scan shows and the student has a fever, we'll bring that student to the isolation area and contact their family. Again, screening for COVID symptoms and keeping them out of the building is one of the most effective ways that we can prevent any outbreak or need for quarantine. And I believe that between our app and our thermal scanning technology, we have a very robust screening protocol in place for this year. Now, one of the big new pieces since we met last is the release of the Rhode Island Department of Health's playbook for outbreak response in K through 12 school settings. It's a 24-page document that we've all been pouring through and ensuring that we understand. And one of the individuals who's really going to have a very thorough understanding of this will be our registered school nurse. Davies is fortunate that we have a full-time registered school nurse who is here every single day of the year to care for students. We're very lucky to have that because it's not common in all schools. So we're excited that we have that resource and confident in our nurses' ability. On top of that, we all have an understanding of this playbook. So I want to go over a few key pieces of information from this playbook. This is important for really everybody in the country to know right now, but really important for parents of school-age children. These are the CDC's most recent list of symptoms of COVID-19. Some of them are old, some of them are new. So you have fever or chills, a cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, fatigue, body aches, headache, sore throat, the new loss of taste or smell, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea. Now, if you're like me, you're reading this list and saying, those are the symptoms of a million things. So what this playbook has outlined is, when are these symptoms a sign of, a most likely sign of COVID-19 and not something else? So here's what the Rhode Island Department of Health has come up with the CDC. They define as a probable case or a likely case of COVID-19 being an individual who either A, has one of these symptoms, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, or new loss of taste or smell. If your child has any one of those, or you have any one of those, you're considered a probable case for COVID-19 given the pandemic nature of the disease. However, you're only considered a probable case for these other symptoms if you have two of them: fever, chills, muscle aches, headaches, sore throat, nausea, diarrhea, fatigue, congestion. So what this tells us is, if I wake up tomorrow and I have a headache, just a headache, that does not mean I'm a probable case for COVID-19. A headache could be a million other things. But if I wake up tomorrow and I have a headache and congestion, I'm a probable case. So this is important for us to understand, because we can't be freaking out every time that a student says, I have a headache. We've had kids with headaches every year. So we're not going to treat a student with a headache as a probable case. The CDC says it's two of those symptoms. So we are well versed in this difference between what makes you a probable case for COVID-19. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, so what? What if my child wakes up and has these symptoms? Let's say your child wakes up and they have a cough. Now, a cough is one of the symptoms where if you just have that, you're considered a probable case. Your child would respond on the screening app, I have a cough, and they're going to get a message telling them to stay home and to engage in distance learning. In order for your child to return to school, they would need to have a negative test for COVID-19. Now, the governor is saying that we are ramping up our testing ability to get that turnaround time in 48 to 72 hours, and I'm hopeful that will happen. If your child wakes up and has 2 of the symptoms in yellow, they would still stay home because they would be a probable case and they would need a negative test to return. But that would not be the case if they only have 1 of them. They're not a probable case. They just might have a headache for a million other reasons. Oops. So it's important for us to understand the difference between a probable case and just having a symptom. And then, of course, there could be situations where a student is a positive case and they have actually tested positive for COVID-19. And we're prepared to work with the families of those children to continue education during quarantine. We are still pouring through the playbook to understand what exactly we need to do as a school under each of these scenarios when a student presents with different symptoms. Again, our hope is if we have successful screening, they won't be in the building in the first place. That's key. But if they do, we're prepared to respond in line with the playbook. I see lots of questions in the chat probably related to that information. We're going to get to that in just one moment, because I only have one more slide to go through with everyone. There has been a lot of question around what will we do with students if they're quarantined? Quarantine is a 14-day period. That's 2 weeks of instruction. Luckily, like I said before, our teachers have 7 front-loaded professional development days. During that time, our teachers are going to build 14-day-long playlist that students will utilize to continue their learning if quarantined. They will be relatively self-guided, but again, all of our plans have days where students will connect with teachers via Zoom, so they'll still get that face-to-face instruction as well. The key is to keep quarantine students learning. There's also been some question around, if we go back 50%, and what does my child do on the days that they're home when their peers on the other side of the alphabet are in person? Our teachers are planning for that as well. Students are going to engage on those 2 days when they're home in what's called asynchronous learning. It's rather self-guided. Students will access assignments, video recordings, lessons through Google Classroom and other platforms, and teachers will check in with them on the days that they're in person. And again, under every scenario, on Mondays, we are doing our classes through Zoom remotely. So our teachers are still building their plans for both quarantine students and for distance learning days, but we will be ready for those when they start. Those are the key updates and changes since we last met. So at this point, I see lots of questions in the chat, so I'm just going to quickly run through these, and then I'll have Mrs. Votto keep me up to date on who else may have questions that they want to ask if you want to use the hand raise feature. But let me start by responding to the chat. Yes, Susan?
Ms. Freitas and I have answered several questions through the chat. The only one we haven't answered yet is how is busing working with this new approach?
Perfect. Okay, so busing, the Department of Health has also changed their bus guidelines slightly. It used to be that it was 1 student every other seat. They've now changed the protocol to 50% of bus capacity, which is 36 students with mask on. So we are still able to provide transportation for all of our students. And really what's going to end up happening is you're probably going to have even lower numbers of students on those buses now because we're reopening at a 50% scenario. So if anything, the number of students will be reduced on buses and allow for additional distancing between students on our buses.
Mr. Flynn-Tabloff, another question from AD. My daughter is high risk and takes the bus. What are we doing about that? There's 22 on her first stop.
So there won't be more than 36 students on the bus. So if there's traditionally 22 students at that first stop, the most it would be is all the kids from that stop plus 14 more spacing out. So she would need to wear her mask while waiting for the bus and while on the bus and sit in her assigned seat. It's still one student spaced as much as possible from the other students. I believe that 50% capacity results in one student per seat, and she would need to wear her mask for the duration. The Department of Health is also recommending that the windows be opened on the buses at all times to allow for greater ventilation. If she is high risk, the mask is extra important for her to have on. I'm going to give you information at the end of the presentation about who you should contact if your student is medically fragile. And we can talk about additional things that we can do.
Okay, another question is, if I live in Central Falls and they are not allowed to have in-student learning, does that affect my children going in the student learning in the Lincoln district? Meaning Davies.
Okay, so remember, we're located in Lincoln, but we're not part of Lincoln. We're separate. So if Central Falls does not have in-student learning, but Davies is doing partial reopening, your child will still come to Davies partial reopening. We're doing our own transportation, so your child will be able to come to Davies on the days that they are assigned to be in person. Susan, I think you skipped one question about when do we find out bus stops and times. I saw that on there. So bus stops and times, those routes and pickup times are still being worked on by our transportation partners, but they are getting closer to having them done. And Lori Dumichel, my executive assistant, will share that information as soon as it's available.
Okay, there's a question about, will health career students be in the nursing home this year? Not at the beginning. The instructors are actually working with the nursing homes and with the Rhode Island Department of Health. So we will use their guidance. Right now, at the start of school, we have to put things on hold. Another question, is there going to be a full distance learning option for parents not comfortable with sending kids in?
So again, at the end of this presentation, you're going to be given the contact information, which is actually mine, if you are anxious about sending your child back in person. When the governor made that announcement that all students would have an option for full distance learning, that was a general statement for the average school. Davies is a career and technical school, and there is no way for children to get the amount of hands-on training that they need in their career and technical program in order to get the industry certifications needed and the work-based learning needed, both for graduation and to get employment upon completion. So Davies is a very unique type of school. So if you are anxious about your child coming back in person, I'm going to give you my contact information, and we need to have a conversation one-on-one, both to understand where that anxiety is rooted so that we can possibly come up with solutions to relieve it, or to talk about other options. Because a full distance learning for the school year at Davies is not going to set your child up for success.
Okay, Chris is anxious to know when he's going to get his agenda.
Chris, those should be given to you on the first day, that orientation day that's assigned to you based upon your grade level and your last name. They're being printed.
Okay, and Crystal would like to know, are there times for the school day changing?
Yes. So, Crystal, that was something I shared a while back, but I'm glad that you brought it back up so I can remind everyone. In order to get students to school, we unfortunately did have to change our start time to 7:15 a.m. And again, I recognize that's early. If I had it my way, I would move our start time later in the day, because all the research shows that high school students actually need more sleep than do younger students. However, if we didn't change our start time by 30 minutes previous, we wouldn't be able to get students to school because there simply are not enough school buses or bus drivers in the state of Rhode Island. So the new start time for students, their instruction will start at 7:15, and the school day for students ends at 1:41. Everything has been shifted 30 minutes back. And I'll be sending out that updated start time schedule along with the school calendar schedule as soon as everything is finalized. I'll send that to both students and to families, and it will be posted on our website.
Okay, Mr. Flynn-Tabloff, Tori would like to know if you can show where the Department of Health and RIDE statement that allows students from hot zones to attend school.
So I don't have any such statement. What I'm making that in-person, partial in-person statement based upon is what I was told from the Commissioner of Education, is that currently, because the majority of students at Davies come from Pawtucket and Central Falls, that's the numbers we need to operate based on. And she has told me that as of right now, because of that, we would be reopening under a partial in-person model for all of our students.
Okay.
But there isn't some statement that says exactly what's being asked there. That's just what I was told from the commissioner for now, is that based upon where the majority of my students come from, that is how we would reopen.
Okay, a parent would like to know if their freshman student is going to receive their Chromebook on orientation day.
That is the goal. So currently, the Chromebooks for the new freshmen are still on order. We are supposed to be receiving them anytime now. As you can imagine, they were on back order because every school district in the country was ordering them, and they come from China through Mexico to Massachusetts and finally to Rhode Island. I believe they are at least in Mexico. That's what I've been told. So we should have them soon. Our IT department is ready to get those unboxed and ready to go to give to your freshmen. So absent any delivery delays, we should be able to give your school issued Chromebook to your freshmen on their orientation day, September 14th or September 15th.
Okay, so Crystal has a question. If her child's last name starts with an R, is the first day of school on the 17th? Or are they doing remote learning the 14th, 15th, and 16th? But that also depends on what grade they're in.
Right, so I'm gonna go back to this just to revisit that because I know this can be a little confusing. So your child's last name starts with R. So if your child is a freshman, they would come on September 15th. That would be their first day of school. And they wouldn't have school again until the remote day on Friday. Because each of these days that are orientation days are only school days for those kids. The rest of the days are days off for the other kids. We're doing a staggered start so that all of the students have time to get to know the school. So if your child is an 10th, 11th, or 12th grader with the last name R, he or she would start on September 17th in person, meaning they didn't do anything on the 16th, 15th, or 14th. They get a little extension to their summer break, and they would be in school on the 17th, distance learning on the 18th, like every other kid at Davies, and then we go to our regular partial schedule the following week.
Okay, I have a parent, Nicole. Has there been any more determination on senior requirements with the work-study credits needed for graduation? So I can answer part of that question. I sit on the statewide advisory board for work-based learning, and we are currently coming up with some alternate work-study opportunities for our students so that they can still get the credits. But right now, it's the beginning of the planning stages. But we also have some companies that are still taking on students. So we're doing case by case depending on the location of the company. For example, the manufacturing companies all follow Rhode Island Department of Health guidelines. So it would be by case in which program your child is in, with the exception of health field right now.
I had a chat sent to me privately, so I'm just going to read that. So a parent asked, my child is going into 10th grade. Is the first day on Thursday? And I'm assuming that this child's last name starts with V because yours does. So hopefully I'm making the right assumption. So if your child's last name starts with the letter V and they're a 10th grader, yes, under the current plan, they would start school on Thursday, September 17th in person. And then they would have distance learning Friday like everybody else. They would not do anything on the 16th, 15th, or 14th because these other groups of students are being oriented.
Okay, so a parent has the question, will the regular schedule be for kids K through Z Wednesday and Friday?
Wednesday the 15th and Friday. Yes, so K through Z, they will report to school for the first time on Wednesday, September 15th, as long as that's if they're a freshman. If they're a freshman. And then they would have distance learning on Friday the 18th. I'm going to take this visual and put it into a calendar that I'll send to all of you to make it crystal clear who's coming on what day and what are the other kids doing on the other days. So I recognize it's kind of complicated. So we're going to create a week 1 breakout of what that week looks like, September 14th to 18th. And then what does it look like every following week based on a 50% scenario? I will get that calendar sent out to all of you as soon as possible.
Okay, Tori has a question. Did we make any progress with DL for academics and in-person learning for SHOP?
So we are not prepared to move to a scenario where students only report to school for their SHOP, because under this reopening scenario that's most likely for us, students would already only be coming to school 2 days a week maximum. It wouldn't work for students to come only for SHOP because, first of all, transportation will become an issue because our sophomores come to SHOP period 5, 6, 7. Our juniors go period 2, 3, 4. And then for seniors, some of the kids are on A week, some of the kids are on F week, some of them run 1 through 5, some of them run 3 through 7. So it very quickly became clear there's no way to effectively manage that or to pay for the additional transportation needs that would arise from allowing people to kind of do this individualized, when do I want to come in for in-person, when do I not? So again, in order to make up for that, we have gone alphabetical. It looks like we're going to be partial in person. We're able to socially distance more than we thought we were going to be able to. And that should make up for there's an inability for us to have people coming in just for certain aspects of the day. The other issue that comes with that is that our academic teachers cannot be teaching the students in front of them at the same time that they're teaching students at home. It's not realistic to ask our teachers to do that. They're already dealing with incredible pressures. So now if I'm asking them to manage the 14 kids that are in front of you and then these kids who are at home on Zoom, it's not going to work. It's not possible, and it's going to be overwhelming for both, I think, the teachers and for the students to manage it. So that's why we're relying upon the schedule that we have that we think really limits in-person quite a bit down to 2 days. I think that's the best solution that we have at this time.
Okay, Dawn has a question. Will students and families have to sign waivers of liability to attend? It's been spoken about on the news sites.
No.
Okay, next question. When are expected to hear from statewide on bus stop and time of pickup? I think you mentioned that, but Crystal might not have.
Yeah, that should be coming soon. My executive assistant that handles transportation actually just got in touch with statewide today. They're making some tweaks to routing to make sure that none of the buses are overloaded, and I hope to have that information soon, and we'll communicate that out to families as soon as possible.
Ms. Torres has a question. What are the cleaning requirements for the school? Will you be required to use hospital grade supplies?
So I'm not sure if we're required to use hospital grade supplies, but we are required to use cleaning supplies that are in line with the CDC guidelines for cleaning schools in the age of COVID. So all of our cleaning supplies and protocols are 100% in line with the Centers for Disease Control guidance. And we also have added a custodian to the day shift when the students are here. And that custodian's sole job is to go around the building all day long, sanitizing high-touch surfaces such as doorknobs, railings, what have you, assisting with the cleaning of classrooms in between each period. We've outfitted all of our classrooms with cleaning supplies so that teachers can do a quick spray of student workstations in between classes. And again, that custodian will be able to help with that. So we're confident in our ability to keep the school clean. We also have invested in 2 electrostatic sprayers that our custodians will use each evening to do a deep cleaning of common areas and instructional areas. And that spray actually adheres to the surface and prevents diseases, including COVID-19. So we're pretty confident in our ability, and we are in line with the CDC guidelines.
Okay, I think Ms. Freitas answered the question for Crystal and Sandra regarding what the second week will look like, and also distance learning for Monday scenario. But Jennifer has a question. Is there a plan in place for students coming from homes with immunocompromised family members?
Right, so we recognize that sometimes it's not the student themselves that's the one who has the issue, but it might be another family member. So the key thing that you need to find some comfort in there is that as a school, there's not really anything that we can particularly do in that regard. But what we're being advised and told is that the key is to understand what makes someone a close contact for COVID-19. So your child or the child of this immunocompromised individual, it's really on them to ensure that when they get home, before they interact with that immunocompromised individual, that they, are certainly washing their hands, possibly changing their clothes, they're wearing their mask, all of those same best practices that should be implemented in the home already are the ones that would need to continue. Again, with the plan we have in place, your child should be able to maintain a significant level of social distance from other students in the school and during passing times, wearing their mask, keeping their hands clean. We're giving everybody hand sanitizer to keep on their person. It's going to be stationed throughout the school as well. It should minimize their risk of exposure if they follow those key practices. But that's the best way that we can keep any of our family members safe, is the responsibility with us.
Okay, right now we're down to the last question. Maria wants to know, when do the student schedules come in?
So we just finished all of the schedules today, because as you probably heard, no school has received their budget yet, including us. So we had a lot of tough decisions to make related to staffing, but we now have successfully done that. So student schedules are complete. Students will get their schedule on their orientation day. When they come into the school that day and they go to an extended advisory period to get oriented to everything, that will include the receipt of their schedule.
Okay, this one's regarding if a student tests positive after they have already been to school and we're waiting for their test result, which comes out positive, how will contact tracing take place, and will those students they have been in contact with have to quarantine also?
Okay, so all of that process that has to happen is outlined in the playbook that we are still getting to know. But if a student is a positive case, so they test positive, that student that tests positive would be isolated at home per Department of Health guidelines. That's been the case since COVID started. Close contacts of that individual would quarantine for 14 days since the last time they were potentially exposed to COVID-19. A close contact is defined by the Department of Health as being within 6 feet of an infected person for at least 15 minutes, or having unprotected direct contact with the secretions of that individual. So basically think about like someone sneezing in your face, or you were in contact with somebody for 15 minutes. That's a close contact. So how the contact tracing will work is, first of all, Davies will do all contact tracing in concert with the Department of Health. We are not medical experts, we're educators. So when that happens, if we have a positive case, we bring in the Department of Health and they will partner with us, with public health workers, to do the contact tracing. How are we going to do that? On buses, there's assigned seats. So what I need parents to do is tell your children, if you're riding the bus, sit in your assigned seat. Don't give the bus driver a hard time. Sit where you're told, sit there every day, because that enables contact tracing. Second, in all of our classrooms, one of the first things teachers are doing is they're creating seating charts so that we know exactly who was near who every day. So if a student tests positive, we can first say, okay, was anyone in that classroom a close contact within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more? If yes, who are they? And then we will give that information to the Department of Health, and they will tell us who needs to quarantine because of their potential exposure.
Okay, Mr. Flynn, Tori asked a question about the schedule. Ms. Freitas answered it, that Monday's distance learning, Tuesday, Thursday is A to J, Wednesday, Friday is K to Z. Tori has a question, says, doesn't it make sense to do 2 days in a row for AJ and then deep clean for the KZ group?
So we actually do deep cleaning every evening. And there's instructional benefits to doing it the way that Mrs. Freitas described, in terms of students not having 2 days of asynchronous self-guided learning at home in a row. That can be very difficult. So those days are better off like that. We're doing deep cleaning every evening. We have our electrostatic sprayers that are being used. We have a custodial staff that's here every evening for a full shift, cleaning instructional spaces, wiping down surfaces, so we can do that daily. That's what allows us to capitalize upon the better instructional benefits of the schedule that we're using.
Chris is wondering how will lunch be, and someone else asked, will students be assigned to lunchrooms or will they be able to eat with their friends?
So I can answer both of those questions. So lunch is going to be different in that before, all of our students in a particular lunch would funnel through 2 locations where they could pick up their lunch and pay for their lunch. That is now 5 locations. So Chris, you will be assigned to a lunch pickup location, but you may choose the location where you eat your lunch, which there are now 5, because that allows everybody to spread out. But Chris, you and all the other students need to recognize, if you get to say lunch location 2 and it's full and you're told to leave by whoever's monitoring the capacity, you got to go pick another location. So we know that after a couple days, everybody's going to know where they want to eat lunch. So the short answer, Chris, is I'm going to assign to you your lunch pickup location, but I'm not going to assign you where you eat it. You just have to abide by the capacity of each of those locations. If you're turned away, find a room with space. Make sense?
Okay, Crystal has a question. Is ventilation in the school? How is the ventilation in the school?
That's a good question. The ventilation in the school is good. I know there's been a lot going on around ventilation in schools, the age of a lot of buildings. We were just talking about this today. I was talking to my facilities manager. Davies meets all of the standards for schools that are set by, hold on a second, I want to get it right. Got it. Okay, so there's an entity called ASHRAE. This is an entity that deals with the ventilation of buildings of all kinds, and they set standards for different types of buildings, whether it's school buildings, office buildings, hospitals, what have you. Davies meets all of the filtration requirements, meaning the thickness of the filters that we utilize in all of our systems, and for the air exchange requirements. Air exchange means how many times an hour is the air in a room fully circulated with fresh air from outside. Our air is exchanged in our classrooms and our space throughout the building between 3 to 4 times an hour, which meets the standard expectation of this body that governs the limits and the rules for all these different building types. We also utilize the filters that meet those standards. We actually go above the standard in that we change our filters 3 times per year, where the standard is only 2. So we have air exchange systems in our classrooms that are functioning, bringing in fresh air, circulating it with the air in the room, and we have our filters. They've all been changed and updated over the summer. They're all clean, ready to go.
Okay, next question, off topic, but where can I find the school supply list for my freshmen, please?
We can get that put on the website. I was going to be sending, once I had a little bit more definite answers around the start of school, that's when I was going to do my welcome letter, both to students and to our new freshmen. But I can ask that we get that list up on the website sooner rather than later for all the students. So supply list.
Okay, is the old section of the school up to date with the ventilation systems?
Yes, actually the old section of our school actually has some of the newest HVAC systems. 2 years ago, we replaced the entire HVAC system in our freshman wing with ceiling mounted units that circulate the air up through the roof. So yes, even the old part of the building has air exchange units, either ceiling mounted or wall mounted, with the same filters and the same air exchange system.
Okay. That's it for the questions right now. Chris does, I think Chris missed the answer to, do we get our schedules on the first day?
Yes, you do, Chris. I also see a question that's same for the modular building, the health building. Yes, they have air exchange units. They are wall units. They filter out through the side instead of through the roof, like some of our other units. We have a question about students with IEPs or 504s who may require to be in school more often. So Mrs. Freitas is in the room, and she is our supervisor of student supports. She and I have been talking about reaching out to families of students with IEPs or 504s to determine if they feel there's a need for their student to be in the building 4 days a week instead of the 2. And we're prepared to work with families with that. So I'm going to continue to work with Mrs. Freitas on that, and you should be hearing from her office to determine if that's appropriate, because we do recognize that, particularly for some of our differently abled students, managing in-person learning some days and distance learning other days can be a real challenge. So we're going to work with the families of those students.
Okay, I have a parent, Dorothy, who's asking about how will the freshman rotation for shops work?
Susan, you want to answer that?
Well, we're currently waiting to revisit the calendar since the date changed. But the way it works is this year we're going on 4-day rotations instead of 8 days because we want to make sure that the students are building relationships with the teachers once they choose a program. Each rotation is going to last 8 days, but your child would be in the rotations for 4 days. So they'll be changing every 8 days, but they'll really be in there the 4 days because of the 2 days in school. Hey, I have a parent that asked about using a face shield instead of a mask.
So all the science actually states that a face shield absent a mask, it doesn't really provide any protection. So face shields are a second layer of protection that only adds to the benefit of a mask. So if your child needs a face mask accommodation, again, I'm going to give you the name of who to reach out to. They could get that accommodation if you feel more comfortable with them wearing a shield when they're not wearing their mask. That's a possibility. But I would highly advise that in the times when they are passing from one class to another or getting their lunch, that at minimum the mask is worn then, because a face shield without a mask really provides minimal, if any protection. That really only protects you if someone sneezes or coughs directly in your face, which
Hey,
people won't do.
Crystal has a question. Is everything that you have gone over today been set in stone if all goes well based on 8/31? Or do you expect to have another forum with more updates?
So I do expect to have another forum on or shortly after 8/31 when the governor makes her announcement. Either for me to say, nailed it, everything I told you on August 19th is still holding true, or to say, I've been led in a different direction by the powers that be and we need to adjust. So right now, this is the best information that I have for you, but I will be having another forum either to validate this information or to update you on changes.
Okay, Chris would like to know if once they come into school, if he's going right directly into his advisory.
Yes, we always do that on the orientation days. You have an extended advisory and you report to advisory first. That will be no different. That's where you'll do your orientation.
Okay, Sheila would like to know how a class is being chosen. Will there be options sent out?
So classes for upperclassmen are chosen in concert with the students and based upon their performance in their previous classes last year. And they also get to choose their electives, etc. In terms of freshmen, that's based upon an analysis of their report cards, how they performed on the math placement assessment that we sent out, and how they did on the Davies entrance exam.
Okay, Sheila has a question. Oh no, sorry about that. You already answered that. Claire has a question. Will there be adult ed classes held at Davies after school hours?
No.
No.
CCRI and I, we've had a long-standing partnership of them utilizing our building after school hours for their adult ed classes, but given the situation, we agreed that this was not the year to do that. So no one else will be using Davies facility. That keeps it empty at evening to do the deep cleaning I talked about earlier.
Okay, Chris has a question. What do we do when we get to the school?
That's a loaded question, Chris. When you show up that day, I'll guide you through everything, but that's going to be a lot for me to explain right now. But basically, you're going to come in the school, you're going to get screened upon entry, and then we're going to direct you to breakfast, and then you're going to go to your advisory, and your advisory teacher will guide you through the rest of the day.
Krista would like to know, when do upperclassmen choose their electives?
Some of you might have been given an option from your guidance counselor before school ended. Others, you're placed in your electives directly, because we as a career and tech school have very, very limited electives. There's not a lot of space for electives. So if you've been taking a foreign language, you continue taking foreign language. So there's not a lot of elective choice. So those decisions are pretty cut and dry for the guidance counselor to make.
Chris would like to know what would happen, what will happen with driver's ed this year?
You'll probably have to get driver's ed elsewhere this year. Or I could do a session. I know Mrs. Medeiros always teaches that. I could possibly do a Davies only session, but you have to remember, as of right now, there's no after school activities that happen in person. They will be remote. So I'll have to check that out with Mrs. Medeiros. I don't know that right now.
Okay, Sheila would like to know, how are freshmen joining sports?
So right now, the only sports that are allowed to operate per the Rhode Island Interscholastic League and the Rhode Island Department of Health are cross country and cheer. And when the school year starts, our coaches do recruiting of freshmen to join those teams. So that recruitment will happen when students report to school. But right now, those are the only sports that can happen. And I don't predict that the other sports will take place in the fall. I doubt that. It's 5:08 right now, everyone. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, including the fact that I have to pick up my son or I'm going to be in trouble. So I want to just, I can probably take a couple more questions, but before I do, I want to give some very important information to everyone. I want to recognize again, we still have a lot of uncertainty, everyone, but I think as a school community, including the parents in the room, we're doing a wonderful job. I'm appreciative of you. I think you're giving us great feedback and great questions. So I appreciate you. Stick with us. We'll get through this. It's going to be okay. Tell your kids it's going to be okay. We're going to figure it all out. This is important for everyone. If you want to discuss a medical accommodation related to mask wearing for your student, please contact Mr. Champagne. There's his email and there's his phone number. We'll get that ball rolling. We would need medical documentation. So an accommodation can't just be, I don't like wearing this. That's not a medical issue. I have severe asthma. Now we're talking. Okay, so please contact Mr. Champagne if you want to discuss that. If you want to discuss concerns about returning your child to in-person learning, please contact me. My email is there and my phone number is there. That discussion warrants a one-on-one conversation. So please reach out to either Mr. Champagne for mask accommodation or to me for concerns about in-person return. The last piece of information I want to give you is there is links, and we will share and post this information to the back to school guidelines, CDC guidance, and that new playbook I told you about. Please stay updated. The only source of reliable information about reopening Davies is from Davies. So check your email, check our website. We are updating our family frequently asked question document tomorrow. Follow us on Insta and Facebook for updates, and expect another forum around 8:31 when the governor makes her announcement. So again, I appreciate everybody. Thank you for your time. I think these forums are very helpful. I know they're helpful for us. I hope you find them informative, and I hope you all have a really wonderful night. Thank you.